We both felt that in the studio. Of course, at first it was like we were meeting for the first time.
Dave Gahan spent his teenage years stealing cars and burning them for fun. By 16, he was kicked out of school and facing jail time. The courts gave him one last chance before prison. Then he walked into a scout hut in 1980 and everything changed. But after decades of fame, addiction, and near-death experiences, the Depeche Mode frontman just made an admission that stunned the music world. In December 2024, at 63 years old, he finally said what fans have been whispering for years. The truth, he revealed, wasn't just about the band's future. It was about everything. Dave Gahan was born on May 9, 1962. In Epping, Essex. He didn't come into the world in a hospital like most people. He was born right at home on Romford Road, in a small house where his mother, Sylvia, and father, Len Calcott, were trying to survive the hard years after World War II. His mother worked on London buses, and his father, who had roots in Malaysia, also drove buses. But when Dave was just 6 months old, his father left without a word. Sylvia was suddenly alone, raising baby Dave and his older sister, Sue. Things didn't get any easier. When Dave was 9 years old, something happened that he would never forget. His stepfather, Jack Gahan, the man who had stepped in after Len disappeared and treated the kids as his own, died without warning. Dave felt like his world had been ripped apart again. But what made it worse was that soon after Jack's death, the man who had left them long ago, his real father, suddenly showed up. Dave walked into the house after school and found a stranger sitting there. His mother said, "This is your real dad." But Dave couldn't believe it. He told her, "That's impossible. My father is dead." For a whole year, Len kept coming around, trying to play father. And then, just like before, he vanished again. That was the last time Dave ever saw him. 2 sudden exits from the same man left a deep scar. It was the kind of thing that stayed with him and shaped the way he looked at the world, especially authority. He learned not to trust too easily. In school, Dave's behavior began to spin out of control. He went to Barnstable School in Badan. But he didn't stay long. By 14, he was skipping classes and spraying graffiti on walls. He broke windows, smashed things, and didn't care what people thought. But the worst part was the cars. He didn't just steal them. He'd race them through the streets for fun, then burn them. He later said, "I love the excitement of nicking a motor, screeching off, and being chased by the police." Eventually, the school had enough. In July 1978, when he was 16, they kicked him out for good. They said he was out of control and a bad influence on the other students. After that, he tried all sorts of jobs, about 20 different ones in just 2 years. He worked on construction sites, did hard labor for little money, and even worked at a yogurt factory. But every paycheck went straight into his growing love for punk. He bought gear from the same store the Sex Pistols used, got a leather jacket, accessories, and even got his first tattoo at 15. He started going to punk shows in London, watching bands like The Clash and The Damned. He especially looked up to Dave Gahan of The Damned. Watching him on stage, Dave thought, I can do that. But his criminal streak didn't stop. Before he turned 16, he had already gone to juvenile court 3 times. One time, after being rejected for a job at a gas company because of his record, he got so angry he destroyed his probation officer's entire office. That led to a punishment. Every Saturday, for a full year, he had to report to a correctional center in Romford. They made him box, cut his hair short, and do manual labor. The court made it clear. One more mistake, and he was going to a youth prison. Then something happened that changed everything. In March 1980, at just 18 years old, he went to a scout hut in Badon for a casual jam session. He sang David Bowie's Heroes, and Vince Clarke, who was starting a band called Composition of Sound, noticed him. Dave had no formal training, but his voice had a raw power. Vince asked him to join the band. Without knowing it, Dave had just stepped onto a completely different path. If he hadn't walked into that scout hut that day, he might have ended up in a detention center. Later that year, in October 1980, he came up with the name that would stick with them forever. He saw it in a French fashion magazine while working on store window displays. The name was Depeche Mode, which meant fashion news. They took it, and even though the magazine got upset at first, it later helped them with publicity. Dave said the magazine even wanted to do a photo shoot with them. Dave's voice and energy helped give the band a new identity. Even though he loved punk and looked up to Susie and the Banshees, it was the Damned who shaped his stage presence. He mixed this attitude with the new world of electronic music after seeing a performance by Fad Gadget. Soon the band left guitars behind and started using only synthesizers. His wild stage moves started to show more influences from MC Jagger to Prince, Elvis, and Bowie. He blended it all into his own style. By late 1980, they were playing small clubs in London. The Bridge House became a key spot. At first, they earned just $15 per show. But things took off fast. On November 12, 1980, while opening for Fad Gadget, a man named Daniel Miller saw them perform. He ran Mute Records. A few weeks later, on December 10th, they got 2 offers, one from Mute and one from a big label offering $200,000. They turned down the big money and shook hands with Miller instead. Then came their first show in the U.S. On January 22, 1982, they played at the Ritz in New York. It was a huge step. The club was legendary, and this was right after Vince Clarke had left the band on December 3, 1981. They had just 3 members now. But Dave's presence had grown so much that the crowd was amazed. He wasn't stiff anymore. He danced, shouted, and held the audience like a real rock star. Their first album, Speak and Spell, came out on October 29, 1981. The song, Just Can't Get Enough, made it to number 11 on the UK charts and got them on top of the Pops. One of the songs, Tora, 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 was written by Dave himself, inspired by his obsession with World War II. That theme, conflict and power, kept popping up in his work over the years. When Vince Clarke left the band, many thought it was over. But in September 1982, a broken frame was released. Dave sang the song "See You" in just one take, and it became their biggest hit yet, reaching number 6 in the UK. The album made it to number 8, proving they could go on without Clarke. Martin Gore took over as songwriter, and Alan Wilder hadn't even joined officially yet. He was left out of recording on purpose. During the 1982 tour, Dave started to get wild on stage. In Germany, he stripped down to his underwear during shows. The press went crazy. They made up wild stories. One said Dave had to be carried off stage and fed fluids. Another said they hated fans under 20. But all the gossip only made the band more popular. In 1984, their song "People Are People" was used for West Germany's Olympic TV coverage. That made it their first number 1 hit anywhere in the world. Back in 1981, the band had put an ad in Melody Maker looking for a new member. Alan Wilder was 22, technically too old, but Dave didn't care. He watched him audition and said Alan could play anything. Dave insisted on hiring him. It turned out to be a perfect match. Alan's first show was on January 20th, 1982. Later that year in October, Daniel Miller made his membership official with a simple phone call. By 1983, Dave had more confidence. He wanted to shape the band's look and ideas, not just sing. When Construction Time Again came out on August 22, 1983, its hammer and sickle imagery showed his growing interest in working-class struggles and industrial themes. It was also the first album with Alan Wilder as a full member. Dave helped with the album concept, even choosing its title based on a lyric from Pipeline. The album hit number 6 in the UK and number 7 in Germany. They recorded it at the Garden Studios in London, and Daniel Miller co-produced it. Dave's vision started to guide more than just the music. It shaped the whole identity of Depeche Mode. Dave Gahan was just a young British singer when everything began to change in the 1980s. In 1984, something incredible happened. Depeche Mode released a song called "People Are People." And it wasn't just a hit. It became a message. The song climbed to number 13 on the US Billboard Hot 100. And it hit number 1 in West Germany. Dave's voice carried the message loud and clear. The lyrics weren't just words. They were about real pain, about discrimination, about violence, especially toward the gay community, which was facing serious attacks during that time. His voice gave those words power. When he sang, "People are people. So why should it be you and I should get along so awfully?" It didn't feel like just a song. It felt like a cry for help. By 1985, the band was on a massive tour. Something very rare happened the next year. In 1986, they were allowed to perform in East Berlin behind the Iron Curtain. That meant they were one of the very few Western bands to play in communist East Germany. On May 18, 1986, Dave stepped onto the Valduna stage and didn't hold back. He crowd surfed. He danced wildly. He broke the rules. The crowd was full of young people who had never seen anything like it. For them, Dave was more than a singer. He became a symbol of freedom. That night stayed in their hearts for years, and it proved that music could cross even the hardest borders. In that same year, Dave and Martin Gore began creating something darker and deeper. Their album Black Celebration came out in 1986, and it showed a side of Depeche Mode that felt more raw and personal. Dave had been worn down by touring. He felt isolated. That pain went into the music. The song stripped used car engines and fireworks as sounds. It was strange, but it worked. Gore's lyrics were influenced by writers like Camus and Kafka, but it was Dave's voice that made them human. One line said, "Your optimistic eyes seem like paradise to someone like me." That wasn't just poetry. That was real. Then came 1987. The band released music for the masses. And something magic happened. Never Let Me Down Again became an anthem. When Dave raised his arms during the chorus, so did the entire crowd. Tens of thousands of fans moved together like one giant wave. It became a tradition that fans still follow today. The album sold more than 1 million copies in the US alone. It went platinum in France, Germany, Sweden, everywhere. It was a success. Dave had become a true frontman. People compared his stage presence to legends like David Bowie and James Brown. But 1988 changed everything. On June 18, Depeche Mode filled the Rose Bowl Stadium in California with 60,000 fans. No one had done that in 8 years. The concert became part of the 101 documentary filmed by the great D.A. Penacre. During Everything Counts, Dave let the crowd take over. The energy was electric. You could hear people still singing the chorus after the band stopped playing. It was proof that Depeche Mode had become a global force. In 1989, they released Personal Jesus. Martin Gore wrote it after reading Priscilla Presley's book Elvis and Me. The idea was about worshiping someone too much, like a person.